1. A long dining table in a dimly lit concrete room with 32 ceramic bowls, one bowl emitting a thin, ghostly wisp of steam. Cinematic lighting, photorealistic, 4K. 2. A close-up of a steaming bowl of soup on a rough wooden table, the steam curling into the cold air. The background is blurred and dark. Cinematic 4K. 3. A wide shot of a silent, abandoned kitchen in an emergency shelter. A radio sits on the counter, its power light glowing green in the shadows. Cinematic 4K. 4. A close-up of an old-fashioned radio on a tiled counter, its speakers emitting a faint, visual representation of static. Photorealistic 4K. 5. A woman's knitted cardigan draped over the back of a metal folding chair, lit by a single overhead fluorescent light. Cinematic 4K. 6. A child's small sneaker sitting alone in the middle of a long, empty concrete hallway. Dramatic shadows stretch toward the camera. Cinematic 4K. 7. A heavy diesel generator in a small outdoor shed, vibrating with a low hum, its metal surfaces gleaming under a yellow floodlight. Photorealistic 4K. 8. A low-angle shot of the concrete exterior of Safe House 7, a massive flood control building anchored to a hillside under a dark, smoky sky. Cinematic 4K. 9. The interior of a reinforced bunker with thick concrete walls and heavy steel doors, the air thick with dust and tension. Photorealistic 4K. 10. A view of 2 weeks of dry food crates stacked neatly against a wall, their labels faded and dusty. Cinematic 4K. 11. A VHF base radio on a desk with a long, coiled antenna wire leading up to the ceiling. High-detail textures 4K. 12. A heavy ash advisory notice posted on a wooden bulletin board, the edges curled and gray from the elements. Photorealistic 4K. 13. A distant view of a chemical fire at Grainer Biologics, a massive orange glow against a dark, bruised horizon. Cinematic 4K. 14. A winding mountain road covered in a thick layer of gray ash, with canyon winds whipping the dust into swirling patterns. Photorealistic 4K. 15. A long line of abandoned cars on a logging road, their doors standing open and headlights dimming in the twilight. Cinematic 4K. 16. A mysterious, pale silhouette moving through a dark spillway channel, its shape barely visible through the thick smoke. Abstract, cinematic 4K. 17. A man in a county utility uniform looking over a set of complex mapping charts on a table. Photorealistic 4K. 18. A top-down view of a map with hand-drawn red circles around reservoir intake points. Cinematic 4K. 19. A supply crate filled with insulin vials and pediatric antibiotics sitting on a metal table. High detail, photorealistic 4K. 20. A close-up of a woman named Leah writing on a clipboard in a crowded command post, her face etched with exhaustion. Cinematic 4K. 21. A fresh battery pack for a radio bank sitting on a cluttered desk under a flickering lamp. Photorealistic 4K. 22. A truck driving through thick, low-hanging smoke on a narrow service road, its headlights cutting 2 bright paths through the ash. Cinematic 4K. 23. An abandoned state trooper's cruiser nose first in a muddy ditch, its driver's side door swinging open. Photorealistic 4K. 24. Swirling gray ash turning every puddle on a mountain road into a thick, sludge-like paste. Cinematic 4K. 25. A high-angle view of the Blackwater Reservoir, the water appearing like a sheet of black glass under a smoky sky. Cinematic 4K. 26. The old flood siren tower standing like a dark sentinel beside a 2-story concrete lodge. Photorealistic 4K. 27. A row of industrial floodlights washing a gravel driveway in a harsh, sickly yellow glare. Cinematic 4K. 28. A heavy front gate of a compound, standing slightly ajar, leading into a dark, silent yard. Photorealistic 4K. 29. A supply truck parked on a steep downhill slope, its tires kicking up gray dust. Cinematic 4K. 30. The front porch of a concrete lodge, the door standing open just a few inches, tied with a piece of paracord. Photorealistic 4K. 31. A first-person perspective looking into a warm, silent dining room, the air hazy with the smell of bleach. Cinematic 4K. 32. Cots folded neatly against a concrete wall, leaving a wide, empty floor space in a large room. Photorealistic 4K. 33. A child's coloring book and a box of crayons sitting neatly on a small table beside a medical kit. Cinematic 4K. 34. A large dry erase board with a head count of 31, and the rule, NO1 outside after dark, written in bold black. Photorealistic 4K. 35. The rule, keep drains sealed, written on a whiteboard, the marker ink appearing thick and dark. Cinematic 4K. 36. The final chilling rule on a whiteboard. Do not respond to voices you cannot see. Photorealistic 4K. 37. A medication table with organized rows of pill bottles and half-empty sterile dressing packages. Cinematic 4K. 38. A handwritten sign-in sheet with names and arrival times, the ink smudged in several places. Photorealistic 4K. 39. A close-up of Ellis Garner's handwriting in a margin, the letters becoming increasingly jagged and messy. Cinematic 4K. 40. 3 ceramic mugs of cold coffee sitting on a kitchen counter next to an overturned wooden chair. Photorealistic 4K. 41. A handheld radio clipped to a dish towel on a counter, its green battery light blinking in the dark. Cinematic 4K. 42. A wide shot of an empty bunk room with tangled blankets and half-zipped duffel bags. Photorealistic 4K. 43. A bathroom sink where the drain has been sealed with multiple layers of thick duct tape and a heavy ceramic plate. Cinematic 4K. 44. A shower floor where the grate is covered by a dinner plate weighted down by a large tin can of food. Photorealistic 4K. 45. A children's room with heavy blankets hung over the windows to block out all light. Cinematic 4K. 46. A small stuffed rabbit tucked carefully beneath a pillow on a makeshift mattress nest in a corner. Photorealistic 4K. 47. A security desk in a dark office with 2 dead monitors and a portable DVD recorder. Cinematic 4K. 48. A DVD disc lying on a desk, a yellow legal pad next to it filled with timestamps and observations. Photorealistic 4K. 49. A close-up of a legal pad with the entry, 12:17 a.m. drain noise in downstairs shower. Cinematic 4K. 50. A close-up of the legal pad entry, 1:21 a.m. voices in vents using names. Photorealistic 4K. 51. The haunting final note on a legal pad, 1:39 a.m. no more names on radio. Cinematic 4K. 52. A man sliding a DVD into a recorder, his hands illuminated by the blue light of the machine. Photorealistic 4K. 53. A grainy security camera view of a crowded room where people are moving with over-careful politeness. Cinematic 4K. 54. A security screen showing 2 women freezing and looking toward a wall in unison, their expressions full of fear. Photorealistic 4K. 55. A teenage girl in a security video bolting toward a hallway, being restrained by 2 concerned adults. Cinematic 4K. 56. 2 figures on a security monitor walking down a dark stairwell with bright flashlights. Photorealistic 4K. 57. A security frame showing the room empty of people near the walls, with cots dragged toward the center. Cinematic 4K. 58. A flickering security image of a woman holding a small child's pink raincoat, her face full of sorrow. Photorealistic 4K. 59. A group of people on a security screen all turning simultaneously to look at a ceiling vent. Cinematic 4K. 60. A woman on a security monitor holding a hand over a child's mouth to keep them silent. Photorealistic 4K. 61. The security footage glitching with horizontal lines and image tearing, revealing a brief glimpse of a wet mark on the floor. Cinematic 4K. 62. A long, wet drag mark on a tiled floor leading toward a dark doorway in a security video. Photorealistic 4K. 63. A man at a radio desk on a security monitor dropping his microphone and backing away in terror. Cinematic 4K. 64. The security monitor cutting to a screen of pure white static. Photorealistic 4K. 65. A man's shaking hands ejecting a disc from a recorder in a dark, quiet office. Cinematic 4K. 66. Building plans spread out on a desk, showing a network of pipes and service corridors beneath the lodge. Photorealistic 4K. 67. An old brass acoustic tube mouthpiece mounted on a wall, its metal surface gleaming damply. Cinematic 4K. 68. A close-up of the brass mouthpiece, showing a layer of moisture as if someone recently spoke into it. Photorealistic 4K. 69. A man backing away from a wall in a dark office, his flashlight beam shaking. Cinematic 4K. 70. A close-up of a kitchen radio, the static breaking for a brief moment to form a clear, spoken name. Cinematic 4K. 71. The man standing frozen in the dark kitchen, listening to the silent radio. Photorealistic 4K. 72. 3 slow, deliberate knocks coming from inside a concrete wall, casting long shadows. Cinematic 4K. 73. A flashlight beam hitting a thumb-sized smear of blood on a cold metal handrail. Photorealistic 4K. 74. A single spent shell casing lying on a cold concrete floor in a dark stairwell. Cinematic 4K. 75. The view looking down into a dark, cold corridor with damp walls and a heavy mineral scent. Photorealistic 4K. 76. A mechanical room in the basement with rows of county cots and stacked boxes of emergency rations. Cinematic 4K. 77. A long, graded trench drain in a concrete floor, covered by pieces of damp, bowed cardboard. Photorealistic 4K. 78. A laundry room door held shut by a thick extension cord wrapped tightly around the handle. Cinematic 4K. 79. The words, "Do not open," written in shaky red marker across a white metal door. Photorealistic 4K. 80. A tiny metallic clicking sound coming from behind a heavy closet door in a dark basement. Cinematic 4K. 81. A woman sitting on the floor of a chlorination closet, holding a shotgun and a pry bar, her face pale. Cinematic 4K. 82. The interior of a closet filled with case files, blankets, and plastic bins piled against the door. Photorealistic 4K. 83. A county radio sitting on a plastic bin with its battery pack removed and lying beside it. Cinematic 4K. 84. An open maintenance binder showing complex flow diagrams of a reservoir intake system. Photorealistic 4K. 85. A close-up of a blue pen circling an equalization tunnel on a technical diagram. Cinematic 4K. 86. The handwritten note in a binder, smart enough to wait, next to a drawing of a pipe system. Photorealistic 4K. 87. A man and a woman whispering in a dark closet, their faces illuminated by a single dim flashlight. Cinematic 4K. 88. A flashlight beam illuminating a wet, pale texture on a heavy steel hatch. Abstract, cinematic 4K. 89. The mechanical corridor lights flickering rhythmically, casting long, jumping shadows on the walls. Photorealistic 4K. 90. A close-up of a metal door handle jumping as something impacts the other side with force. Cinematic 4K. 91. A grease pencil note on a wall. If you hear anyone through the metal, make them bleed first. Photorealistic 4K. 92. The entrance to a massive underground chamber, the air thick with the smell of algae and damp concrete. Cinematic 4K. 93. A steel catwalk stretching over a dark, deep equalization channel with black water flowing below. Photorealistic 4K. 94. A child stuffed rabbit hanging by one ear from the railing of a dark maintenance platform. Cinematic 4K. 95. A collection of shoes and blankets scattered across a cold, wet platform above the water. Photorealistic 4K. 96. A flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of a vast underground chamber, hitting support columns. Cinematic 4K. 97. A woman limping along a steel catwalk, her face set in a look of grim determination. Photorealistic 4K. 98. A large manual wheel valve on a catwalk, its surface covered in fresh, shiny scrape marks. Cinematic 4K. 99. Two people leaning their weight into a massive metal wheel, the valve groaning as it turns. Photorealistic 4K. 100. The water in a dark tunnel shifting and churning as a bypass valve is slowly closed. Cinematic 4K. 101. A multitude of voices echoing through a network of brass acoustic tubes in a dark chamber. Photorealistic 4K. 102. A pale, elongated limb with claws reaching out from a dark drainage slot toward a catwalk. Cinematic 4K. 103. A bright muzzle flash illuminating a dark chamber for a split second, revealing pale shapes in the water. Photorealistic 4K. 104. A man swinging a heavy metal pry bar in a dark corridor, the movement blurred and energetic. Cinematic 4K. 105. A spray of bleach mist hitting a dark, wet surface, the liquid glistening in a flashlight beam. Photorealistic 4K. 106. A bright red flare burning on a steel catwalk, casting long, flickering shadows against the concrete walls. Cinematic 4K. 107. The silhouette of a pale creature recoiling from the harsh light of a red flare. Abstract, cinematic 4K. 100. A man dragging a woman backward along a metal grating as a flare sputters between them. Photorealistic 4K. 109. The heavy steel door of a pump room slamming shut and being barred with a metal rod. Cinematic 4K. 110. A woman's hand reaching for an emergency spill siren pole behind a cracked plastic cover. Photorealistic 4K. 111. An old mechanical siren tower on a ridge, its silhouette vibrating as it emits a powerful wail. Cinematic 4K. 112. The interior of a concrete lodge shaking with the force of a massive, rhythmic siren. Photorealistic 4K. 113. A view of the front yard through a window, where the gravel seems to be shifting and moving like liquid. Cinematic 4K. 114. Thousands of small, pale shapes writhing over each other in the harsh yellow light of a floodlight. Photorealistic 4K. 115. A man and a woman standing in a dark doorway, looking out at a yard filled with movement. Cinematic 4K. 116. A woman holding a burning red flare, stepping off a porch into a yard filled with shadows. Photorealistic 4K. 117. A man running toward a truck in a dark yard, the ground around him churning with movement. Cinematic 4K. 118. A truck's headlights turning on, illuminating a scene of chaos and shifting shadows. Photorealistic 4K. 119. A truck fishtailing in gray ash as it speeds away from a concrete lodge into the dark woods. Cinematic 4K. 120. A view in a rearview mirror of a concrete lodge glowing with yellow light as it recedes into the smoke. Photorealistic 4K. 121. A hand reaching out to rip a radio from a truck's dashboard and throwing it out the window. Cinematic 4K. 122. A lone radio lying in the gray ash of a mountain road, its speakers emitting a faint, distorted voice. Photorealistic 4K. 123. A man speaking urgently to a group of officials in a brightly lit command post. Cinematic 4K. 124. A map on a wall being marked with large red X's over various emergency shelter locations. Photorealistic 4K. 125. The foundation of a demolished building, now a flat slab of concrete in a silent forest. Cinematic 4K. 126. A steel mesh and poured concrete seal over a dark reservoir intake pipe. Photorealistic 4K. 127. A maintenance binder sitting in a plastic tote under a workbench in a dusty garage. Cinematic 4K. 128. The cover of a binder smelling faintly of chlorine and old, damp paper. Photorealistic 4K. 129. A close-up of a person's eyes reflecting the dim light of a garage as they look at an old binder. Cinematic 4K. 130. A shadow moving beneath the surface of a dark, still utility sink in a quiet basement. Abstract 4K. 131. A row of 32 empty bowls on a table, the the steam long gone, leaving only cold ceramic. Cinematic 4K. 132. The silent, dark hallway of Safe House 7, the child's sneaker still sitting in the center. Photorealistic 4K. 133. The yellow floodlights of the safe house flickering one last time before going dark. Cinematic 4K. 134. A view of the black reservoir water under a moonless, smoky sky, the surface perfectly still. Photorealistic 4K. 135. A close-up of the brass mouthpiece in the office, a single drop of moisture falling from the rim. Cinematic 4K. 136. The heavy paracord on the front door snapping, the door drifting open into the night. Photorealistic 4K. 137. A wide shot of the valley under an ash advisory, the landscape looking like a gray, alien world. Cinematic 4K. 138. The rhythmic pulse of a distant siren echoing through a dark, empty canyon. Photorealistic 4K. 139. A handheld radio in the ash, its light fading to black as the battery finally dies. Cinematic 4K. 140. A close-up of a pair of muddy boots on the floor of a truck, covered in gray paste and ash. Photorealistic 4K. 141. A man's face in the glow of a dashboard, his expression haunted and distant. Cinematic 4K. 142. A shelf of medical supplies in a dark room, the labels reflecting a tiny bit of moonlight. Photorealistic 4K. 143. The dark silhouette of the siren tower against a sky filled with drifting chemical ash. Cinematic 4K. 144. A concrete stairwell leading down into absolute darkness, a single flashlight beam at the top. Photorealistic 4K. 145. The texture of a damp concrete wall, with ancient mineral stains forming strange patterns. Cinematic 4K. 146. A stack of cots in a dark room, the metal frames casting long, skeletal shadows. Photorealistic 4K. 147. A close-up of a child's coloring book, the last page half-finished with a bright yellow sun. Cinematic 4K. 148. The hum of the diesel generator abruptly stopping, leaving the safe house in total silence. Photorealistic 4K. 149. A single red flare burning out in the middle of a dark gravel yard, leaving only a wisp of smoke. Cinematic 4K. 150. The view of the equalization tunnel from the catwalk, the dark water flowing like ink. Photorealistic 4K. 151. A close-up of the manual wheel valve, now locked tight and covered in frost. Cinematic 4K. 152. A maintenance worker looking into a dark utility sink with a flashlight, his face full of caution. Photorealistic 4K. 153. The sound of a voice coming through an old, dry pipe in a quiet house during a storm. Abstract, cinematic 4K. 154. A hand closing a plastic tote and sliding it under a workbench into the shadows. Photorealistic 4K. 155. A long, slow pan across the empty dining room of Safe House 7, focusing on the stillness. Cinematic 4K. 156. A close-up of a dry erase marker lying on the floor, its cap missing and the tip dried out. Photorealistic 4K. 157. The heavy concrete walls of the safe house, showing the marks of old floodwaters. Cinematic 4K. 158. A flashlight beam sweeping across a ceiling vent, showing the dark, empty slats. Photorealistic 4K. 159. The silhouette of a man looking out a window at a dark reservoir, his reflection pale in the glass. Cinematic 4K. 160. A stack of emergency blankets in their plastic wrappers, reflecting the cold light of a headlamp. Photorealistic 4K. 161. The texture of the gray ash paste on a truck's windshield, smeared by the wipers. Cinematic 4K. 162. A close-up of a handwritten headcount of 31, the 1 smeared by a thumb. Photorealistic 4K. 163. The brass acoustic tube system, a complex web of metal pipes running through the building's skeleton. Cinematic 4K. 164. A wide shot of the spillway tunnels, the massive concrete arches disappearing into the hillside. Photorealistic 4K. 165. The faint glow of a command post in the distance, a small island of light in a dark valley. Cinematic 4K. 166. A close-up of a radio dial being turned through static, the numbers glowing orange. Photorealistic 4K. 167. The shadow of a man walking down a long, ash-covered road, his figure small against the landscape. Cinematic 4K. 168. A single dinner plate lying upside down on a shower floor, covering the drain. Photorealistic 4K. 169. The smell of bleach and wet wool hanging in the air of a silent, dark room. Abstract, cinematic 4K. 170. A truck's tire tracks in the ash, leading away from a dark building and into the mist. Photorealistic 4K. 171. A close-up of a first aid kit, its White Cross logo faded and scratched. Cinematic 4K. 172. The dark, heavy bulk of the safe house lodge, sitting silently on the slope above the water. Photorealistic 4K. 173. A hand reaching out to touch the cold concrete of a bunker wall, the surface rough and gritty. Cinematic 4K. 174. A wide shot of the reservoir intake branch, the metal structures looking like skeletal remains. Photorealistic 4K. 175. The final glow of the chemical fire on the horizon, fading into a dull, dark red. Cinematic 4K. 176. A single, pale claw mark on the side of a metal supply crate. Photorealistic 4K. 177. The quiet, empty office of Safe House 7, the building plans still spread on the desk. Cinematic 4K. 178. A close-up of a child's stuffed rabbit's glass eye, reflecting the light of a distant flare. Photorealistic 4K. 179. The heavy steel gate of the reservoir, chained and locked under a dark sky. Cinematic 4K. 180. A man sitting at a workbench, the light of a single bulb reflecting off his tired eyes. Photorealistic 4K. 181. The final image of a steaming bowl, the vapor now a thin, disappearing line in the cold air. Cinematic 4K.